Everything Outdoors welcomes you to today's video, titled Getting Started in Kydex Holster Making, Tools of the Trade. So you're looking at getting into making Kydex holsters, but you don't know where to start with what you need in terms of tools. So first we'll start at looking at the most basic tools needed for both layout and cutting of the raw material sheet that you will be purchasing. To lay out the material, you'll need just a simple ruler or a yardstick, and I prefer to use soapstone as a marker. When you draw on the back side of the Kydex material, you get a nice white line, but you can go and easily erase it. It comes off and doesn't leave any residue. If you go and mark on the textured side of the Kydex, it leaves a much more pronounced line, but takes a little bit more effort to get it out of all the little crevices on the material. For cutting the material, I typically use just a standard utility knife. I found that I can usually use my yardstick as a straight edge and score the material about 3 times with the utility knife until I'm able to go and fold the material and break it and have it snap in a nice clean line. I typically cut on top of my cutting mat in order to both save the blade on my knife and to prevent cutting into the tabletop of my workbench. So from here, we'll go and take a look at the tools necessary for forming the Kydex material. The next step in the Kydex holster making process is forming. So the most important tool that you'll need for the forming process is any sort of oven. I use a small convection oven. I find that it's very convenient to use on the top of my workbench, and the convection feature I feel allows me to have a more consistent temperature inside the oven. With that said, you'll also want to wear a pair of light-duty gloves, as the material that you'll be pulling out of the oven will be somewhere between 275 and 300 degrees Fahrenheit. And with a light pair of gloves, it's just enough to keep the heat off your hands that you can manipulate it, but they're not bulky enough that they get in the way. When we move from the oven, we go to the press. There's a couple different types of presses that I use. The most simple just being 2 pieces of plywood, and on the top and bottom piece I have some anti-fatigue foam mat, which is pretty much just a neoprene foam rubber, or if you want, you can buy specific Kydex thermoforming foam. It's just my press here is simple, and it was cheap to make. All you do is you set your hot piece of plastic on the bottom, you put your form piece on top, or vice versa, put the top on, and then the next tool that you'll need will be sets of clamps. Here I have 2. I typically use 4, one on each corner of the press, and I feel that generates plenty of pressure to be able to get the definition that I need. After the forming process, we will go to shaping. Probably the most important shaping tool that you will need will be a benchtop belt sander. The sander that I have here is a combination belt sander as well as a disc sander, and I use this for removing large amounts of material as well as doing some rough finishing shaping work for the contours on the holster. For removing large amounts of excess material coming right out of the press, I like to use my Dremel kit with a cutoff wheel as well as a sanding drum for working on shaping some of the tighter corners and radiuses on the holster. When you're using both pieces of equipment, you'll definitely probably want a respirator as well as safety glasses, as it will be throwing off lots of Kydex dust. Another tool that's extremely helpful for shaping is a heat gun. With the heat gun, you're able to heat up small areas and precisely work it and shape it to exactly how you want it, as well as to loosen some of the definition in certain areas to allow the firearm to slip out of the holster a little bit easier. After we do shaping, we look at finishing. So we'll go ahead and take a look at what tools are required for finishing Kydex holsters. When looking at the finishing processes, we have quite a few tools that we need. The first of them being a drill press or a handheld drill would also be suitable. And this is required for drilling the holes through typically the 2 layers of Kydex in order to attach fasteners or other hardware. In addition to the drill or a drill press is a small arbor press with some eyelet setting dies. Here I have a simple set of dies that I have always set up right on the arbor press. And what these are used for is for attaching multiple pieces of Kydex together with eyelets. What you'll do is you'll drill your hole with your drill press or handheld drill. Then you will put your eyelet through the 2 pieces and then put that in between the 2 pieces of the setter die, and then pull away on the handle on the arbor press, and it will roll a nice crimp on the eyelet in order to get a nice finish. After you have all of your eyelets in, what we'll want to do is we'll want to smooth out the edges of the material so that there aren't any sharp edges, and it just makes the Kydex much more pleasing to the eye. So we'll take a look at what I use for doing that. For doing the final finishing work on the Kydex holsters, I use my benchtop bench grinder, and on one side I have a sisal wheel, which is similar to a burlap material. Use this for removing large amounts of material on the edges to blend edges in or to knock the corners off. And then on the other side I just have a regular cotton buffing wheel that I don't have any buffing compound on. And I use this to smooth everything out, and to finish everything off you just need a little bit of light pressure. And what the buffing wheel actually does is it starts to melt the top layer of the Kydex, and it allows it to become very smooth and actually a little bit shiny, and it gives it a very nice finished look. These are about all the major tools that you will need to get yourself into the Kydex forming process. We will leave a list of all the tools required in the description below, and you can feel free to ask any questions and we'll be certain to try and help you out.